Hi everybody, Skip the End back once again for part 2 of my PS3 collection. I've got another 30 games to show you, so let's get started. First one we have here is Mortal Kombat. This is actually Mortal Kombat 9, and it was like one of the sort of another reboot, but this one really hit the spot in terms of the game's roots and why people loved it in the first place. Very sort of visceral combat. Really like messed up fatalities, and a really interesting storyline as well. It sort of picks up from the last game where it sort of starts off where everyone's dead, and then but sort of flashbacks to how things were before, and you sort of slowly go through the story and play as pretty much all the characters. It works pretty much like Injustice did if you ever played that. So yeah, very good game. Next up we have Yakuza 4. This is obviously the fourth entry in the Yakuza series. Very different this one in that you don't just play as Kazuma Kiryu, the guy at the front here. You also play as like other new characters, up to three new characters for the first time. And yeah, it's pretty interesting. I've only played it for like an hour or so, unfortunately. So and I played the Yakuza 3 and I absolutely loved that. So be sure to see that in the next part of this video series. But yeah, Yakuza 4 seems decent so far. Next up we have Darksiders. This is a 3D adventure slash RPG. Sort of like Zelda-ish, but a lot darker, not quite as polished as that series. I did actually have the second one on the 360, and I couldn't really get into it, unfortunately, even though it was technically a better game. But this one's alright. It's not my favourite game in my PS3 collection, but it's not bad either. Next up we have Deadpool. Surprisingly good, actually. I mean, the gameplay isn't really that special, but where this game really shines is the dialogue, the cutscenes, and the sort of rather hilarious sort of humour. It's kind of references like a lot of pop culture and that, and Nolan North, who voices Deadpool, is just absolutely fantastic in this, and yeah, it's definitely. I would say it's definitely worth one play, at least. Yeah, even if the game itself is nothing special. Okay, next up we have two games: Infamous 1 and Infamous 2. Both developed by Sucker Punch, who also made the Sly Cooper series. Well, apart from the most recent one. But yeah, two really good games. I kind of prefer the second one because there's a little bit more colour to like the actual world. The first one sort of feels rather sort of grey and rather murky, but other than that, I think they're pretty much on par with each other. They're both really good open world action games, very similar to sort of Prototype if you ever played that game. But unlike that game, you get to decide if you're going to be good or evil. And yeah, it sort of adds a little bit more replay value. You definitely want to play through this game twice to see how your choices affect the story. So yep, both excellent games. Okay, next up we have another two games. Dead Space and Dead Space 2. I don't have Dead Space 3 because I didn't really much like it. I did own it, as you like older fans might have, viewers of mine might have seen like a previous like video like years ago, but I didn't keep it because I didn't like the direction the series was going, and but for me the Dead Space 1 and 2 really capture the old style sort of survival horror games like Resident Evil and other games like The Suffering, for example. And yeah, I do definitely see a lot of similarities between Dead Space and The Suffering. Sort of a lot of jump scares and very intense, rather sense of aloneness, and really sort of fucked up enemy types as well. but yeah, I would say that the first one probably is better because it's a lot more survival horror focus, whereas the second one tries to put a lot of action set pieces. And I don't get me wrong, they are good, but it's sort of you weren't really as surprised by this game as you were by the original. But still, two fantastic games that I'm glad that I have in my collection. I'm glad that I played both of them. Actually, the first Dead Space game was the first sort of survival horror game that I took a chance on and played, and I'm kind of happy I did. So, it gave me the confidence to play more. Next up, we have Mirror's Edge, a decent but flawed first-person like platforming game, I guess you could say, because a lot of the gameplay involves you sort of going across buildings, trying to sort of climb up and climb down buildings. There are like certain enemies you can take out as well, but those parts felt quite sort of finicky, and like you didn't know if you were going to survive that fight or not. Trying to disarm certain enemies, and you didn't have a gun either, so you either had to run or you had to sort of disarm them, which could be very sort of hit and miss. But the platforming sections were pretty good. You know, it's not perfect, but I feel that there's definite like potential for the sequel whenever that should come out to sort of iron out the sort of little sort of flaws with the game, because it's not bad. Next up we have Sonic Generations. Now this blends the old school 2D Sonic to the more modern sort of 3D Sonic. Unfortunately I haven't played this one yet, but I've heard very good things about it, and yeah, I can't wait to give that one a go. Next up we have the Hitman HD Trilogy. This comes with Hitman 2, Hitman Contracts, and Hitman Blood Money. 2 I didn't really get very far in when I first played it. I couldn't even get past the first level, I was that bad. But Contracts I got a little bit further into, up until, I forget the name of the mission, but there was like this guy on a boat who, if you got caught, would set off this like bomb and like kill like anyone in the vicinity, and I couldn't quite get around to it. Blood Money I have actually beaten not once but multiple times, even on the highest difficulty, which I probably wouldn't have done had I not sort of played it several times. But yeah, for me that is the perfect stealth game for me. I don't think there's another stealth game, not even in the Metal Gear Solid series, that has sort of come close to being as good as Hitman Blood Money, in my opinion. So it's a pretty decent collection. Next up we have Grand Theft Auto 4, the complete edition. This comes with the main game and the 2 episodes from Liberty City, those being The Lost and Damned and The Ballad of Gay Tony. I wasn't a big fan of GTA 4, mainly because of the direction the series was taking. I liked the sort of realistic look of it. It was just it just felt a little bit more too serious, a little bit more sort of soulless compared to like the older games like Vice City and San Andreas. And also the content as well. There wasn't as much stuff to do in this game as there was in the previous games. But it's still a decent game. It's not terrible by any means. It's very good. It's just didn't quite live up to the hype of the games that have come before it. However, the episodes from Liberty City, both of them, really sort of, if you were disappointed by GTA 4, then the DLCs will definitely make up for it, because they're a lot more entertaining, a lot more fun to experience as well. So yeah, if you're gonna get this game, I'd recommend getting this version, just because you get to experience all of it and understand why they got better with this series with the DLCs included. Next up we have Doom 3. This is a pretty legendary first-person shooter series from id. And this is the BFG Edition. It comes with Doom 1 and 2 on the disc, which is a nice little touch. Now this game actually originally came out on the Xbox, much like Chronicles of Riddick did on the last video that I showed you. So yeah, it was another game I missed out on. However, I'm kind of glad I played this version because there were certain things that they fixed, like the flashlight or torch sections, where you'd have to either have your gun out or have your torch out, and you can have both. But in this version, they kind of rectified that when you could have like the torch on your like gun. So for me, I kind of preferred that because otherwise I probably wouldn't play it because I've been too scared. But the game itself is good. It's not. I wouldn't put it in the same level as say like Half-Life 2, for example. But it's definitely a solid FPS, and for me, the closest comparison I can give it is something like Wolfenstein: The New Order that came out last year. It sort of stays fairly faithful to the series it was built on, but doesn't really change too much. It sort of brings the best out of the retro and the modern. So yeah. Next up we have the Sly Trilogy. This comes with the first 3 Sly Cooper games, and it's kind of weird because the first Sly game I played was actually the third one, because I played the demo of the first one. I just couldn't get into it. It was just felt very frustrating to play at that time. Mind you, I was a lot younger back then. But then I heard that the series got better and better as each game released, and I played 3 and I really enjoyed it. And when I found out that there was going to be a HD collection, I was willing to pick it up and try both the first and second one. And the first one I did grow to like, although I didn't like how linear it was, and like sort of didn't really get like the open world that you got from the third game. But then I played the second, and that obviously added the open world sort of setting, and I really liked it. Although I felt it was a little bit too long, unlike the third game, which for me is my personal favourite. So, but yeah, a fantastic series, one of the best on the PS2, and kind of happy that it got a HD sort of repaint, I guess you could say. So yeah. Excellent sort of platformy sort of. It's more sort of stealthy than like Jak and Daxter or Ratchet and Clank, but it's definitely no less fun. Next up we have the Tomb Raider Trilogy. This comes with Tomb Raider Legends, Underworld, and Anniversary. These were the games developed by Crystal Dynamics when they took over the series. They're sort of famous for the Soul Reaver series as well, which was sort of fairly similar to the Tomb Raider series at the time. However, I did actually play Legend on the PS2 when it first came out, and I was sort of pleasantly surprised how they made a lot of improvements over Angel of Darkness. And Anniversary I didn't play, however I know it's like a reboot of the first game, and I also know it's similar to Legend as well, so I probably will enjoy that. Underworld I never played either, but I hear it's like the weakest of the 3, but I'm willing to give it a go, so yeah. Okay, halfway done. Next up we have Siren Blood Curse. This is part of the Forbidden Siren series, as I'm familiar with it in Europe, and it's weird the second game didn't actually come out in outside of like Japan or Europe. It never actually came out in the America for some reason. I don't know why. But yeah, I don't know if this is a completely new game or a reboot of the first one. All I know is it was released as like a episodic game title, and then sort of was put onto disc, and I much prefer to sort of have games on the disc than actually download it digitally. But I've not actually played this yet because I'm not really good with survival horrors, as you know. But I will give it a chance once I get through the others, in the series. Next up we have Enslaved, Odyssey to the West. This is developed by Ninja Theory, and I believe they also made Heavenly Sword, although I didn't really think too much of that game. This one actually though is quite good. It's very similar to Ico, in that you control one character while trying to protect this like NPC who does also have their uses though, so it's not like you're doing all the work, like she's sort of helping out also. And yeah, graphically very nice, plays solid if a little bit repetitive after a while, and the story has its moments, although I feel that the ending was kind of weird if you've ever like beaten this game. But it's not bad. Next up we have XCOM Enemy Within. Now I haven't actually played this one, although I did play Enemy Unknown when that first came out. It was like the reboot from the original XCOM series, developed by Firaxis, who I think made a lot of sort of strategy games on the PC. And yeah, I'm not really big on strategy games, but the XCOM series is always one that I've personally quite enjoyed, mainly because the soldiers you pick, if they die on the battlefield, they're gone for good, and that adds a sort of lot of tension to the gameplay, especially if you've spent a lot of time doing missions and ranking that certain soldier up, only for them to die and like all your plans have sort of gone out the window. So, but yeah, I really like that in this game, and yeah, it definitely adds a lot of replay value, and yeah, it's a really really good strategy. I mean, even if you're not a fan of strategy games, I would recommend giving this one a go because I think it's quite fun. Next up, we have Final Fantasy HD remasters of Final Fantasy X and X-2, aka Final Fantasy X J-pop, as I like to call it. Now, I've not actually, again, much like Kingdom Hearts, I haven't really played much of Final Fantasy X, unfortunately. I know a lot of people love it, and from what I see, I can understand why. However, I just hear like Tidus speak, and I just can't stand. I just can't stand his voice. But it was a collection I was sort of willing to sort of take a look at, and ended up buying it. Hopefully, we'll play it one day, but we'll see. X-2 I probably won't play because I even like the intro to that game. Just and me not being a big Final Fantasy fan anyway, even despite that, I still looked at it. I was just like, this is the beginning of the end of this series. I feel, and it's kind of gone that way, like from like Final Fantasy 12 and the abomination that is 13. So next up we have Folklore, another game that I've not played. However, this was probably the first exclusive game that the PS3 had that sort of piqued my interest a little bit. I mean, I wasn't big on JRPGs at that time, but I thought I would pick it up for a reasonable price, I've not actually played it, but I hear it's sort of set in Ireland, and it involves you sort of capturing certain monsters who can fight for you, I think. It sort of sounded very sort of Ni no Kuni to me, so and anything sort of based, like, not based, but anything that's sort of reminiscent of that game, then definitely piques my interest, so yeah. Okay, next up we have the Ico and Shadow of the Colossus HD collection. Two of the finest games ever released. Hopefully one day we will receive The Last Guardian. If not on PS3, then definitely on PS4, but I highly doubt that at this point, which is really sad because I love the developers who made these games. Ico is one of my favourite games of all time. It's like a sort of platform sort of puzzle game where you control as this boy called Ico, and trying to get out this like huge castle, which is like a giant puzzle in itself. And you're sort of helping this girl called Yola out, who's sort of stranded in this castle also, and you sort of so slowly sort of discover what she's all about, and you sort of help each other get through this castle and eventually try and get out of it. And yeah, it's a really emotional, very sort of beautiful, serene game. Shadow of the Colossus is slightly different in that you play as Wanda, who is trying to help his girlfriend and trying to sort of bring her back to life, and you work with this guy like mysterious creature called Dorman, who offers to help you out with that in exchange for taking out all these giant monsters known as Colossi. And there's 16 of them you have to defeat, and yeah, that's pretty much it really. There's not really a lot to it, but the journey in getting to these monsters and the effort it takes to beat them is like part of that amazing experience. So yeah, both absolutely fantastic games. Next up we have Red Dead Redemption, the Game of the Year edition. This comes with the original Red Dead Redemption and also Undead Nightmare, along with all the sort of multiplayer DLC packs that have sort of been released at this point. And yeah, it's a fantastic game from Rockstar. I believe it was Rockstar San Diego who made this one, not Rockstar North. But yeah, for me, it's my favourite Rockstar game of the PS3/360 era. Just I didn't expect there to be that much interest in making a sort of Wild West game, not let alone one as amazing as this one. But they managed to pull it off, and it's quite an amazing achievement. You play as John Marston, who's had to come back to the Old West to sort of pay his debts almost for stuff he did in the past, and sort of under arrest from like these two cops who sort of brought him back here, and sort of trying to get him to help out them taking out this like former gang of John Marston's. And yeah, it's a really interesting story, and for me, John Marston's one of the best characters I've seen in the game for quite some time. Undead Nightmare is sort of like a B-movie sort of spin-off. What if this like world was invaded by zombies and like there was a zombie outbreak? And it doesn't take itself too seriously, but it's still pretty fun. It's not obviously not quite as long as the main game, but it's quite it's got quite a lot of content for what it is. So yeah. Okay, next up we have probably one of the best series on the PS3, well, it's exclusive-wise anyway. Uncharted Drake's Fortune, Uncharted Among Thieves, and Uncharted Drake's Deception. This is actually the special edition that I found in CEX a few years back. All of these are fantastic. I would probably go with a lot of other people and say that 2 is the best one, mainly because it sort of got rid of all the flaws of the first game and sort of made it a little more accessible for those who weren't as used to like third person action games, and really sort of streamlined it almost perfectly. And there were a lot of memorable moments. Some of the dialogue, especially at the end, probably that's probably one of the funniest ending I've ever witnessed in a game. 3 was also pretty good. It just didn't quite have that same impact as the second one, in my opinion. But all 3 of these games are absolutely superb, and quite why Sony hasn't released a HD collection of all 3 of these games for the PS4, I don't know. My only guess is because Naughty Dog would have to rework these because the sort of engine like processor that the PS4 uses is different to like the cell processor they had for the PS3. That's my only assumption. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to Uncharted 4 as well. I've become a huge fan of this series, so yeah. Okay, 5 games to go. First up we have Dragon Age 2. A game that I have not played, unfortunately, because I've not gotten through Dragon Age Origins, as I mentioned in the last video. But once I do, I will play this. It's a little bit different in terms of gameplay. It's a lot more action orientated. It's a lot more user friendly than the first game, which I might actually enjoy. But I know that the story wasn't quite as good, and I know that you're only in like this one location, I believe, called Kirkwall. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments. But yeah, it seems pretty good, and once I get through the first game, will give this a go. Next up, we have Tales of Symphonia Chronicles. This comes with the original Tales of Symphonia and also Tales of Symphonia: Dawn of the New World, which I believe was a Nintendo Wii exclusive. I haven't played either of these, unfortunately. The only Tales games I've sort of played... I mean, I played Tales of Exilia quite a lot, and also Tales of Vesperia for like a few hours. But other than that, I'm not very experienced with this series, although they all seem kind of interesting. They all have their own sort of stories to tell, and yeah, I definitely give... because I've heard a lot of good things about the original Tales of Symphonia, so that's kind of why I bought this, so yeah. It's a pretty popular JRPG series. Next up we have WWE All Stars. Now this is very different from the SmackDown and more recently the WWE games. This is more sort of arcadey, and that it doesn't really take itself too seriously. You can do like crazy like acrobatic moves and like punch people in the air and do like crazy sort of finishing moves that wouldn't be realistic even like in the real world. But yeah, that's what I like about it. Also, it has 3 different campaign modes for like I know you're up against like trying to get to the Undertaker and Randy Orton, and also DX for like a tag titles or whatever. And also there's a sort of what if matches like Stone Cold versus CM Punk or John Cena versus Hulk Hogan, and they sort of, it's where they sort of package these sort of video promos and edit them and sort of like make it a genuine sort of promo for a match. So yeah, it's pretty interesting. So but yeah, it's a good game. I like it because it's different from the like the SmackDown and WWE games, because for that reason alone, really. Next up we have Twisted Metal. This is another reboot of pretty popular series on the PS1, and also Twisted Metal Black on the PS2. And yeah, I kind of like it. I really love the music in this game. I felt that definitely made some great choices in the music. The developers of this game, I forget who developed it. I think it was the same people who did PlayStation All Stars. But it was like a Sony exclusive, PS3 exclusive, and it's a racing game, like car combat racing game, and yeah, it's pretty fun. It's not just like racing; it's also like Destruction Derby style events where you have to take out all the drivers in the actual event, and there's even like boss fights, which is pretty crazy, and yeah, it's decent. The ending, the last level, I didn't really like too much. I've not gotten past it as hard as I've tried. It's just, I find it really impossible, and but maybe I will beat it one day. So if you played the last level, you know what I'm talking about. Okay, and the final game for this part is Sega Mega Drive Ultimate Collection. Now this has all the classics like Sonic, Streets of Rage, Golden Axe, Echo the Dolphin, Dr. Robotnik's Mean Bean Machine. What else does it have? Kid Chameleon, Shinobi 3, Columns, Alter Beast, a lot of the great, the sort of, if not great, then like infamous like games from Sega back in the 90s, and yeah, it's a pretty damn good collection. This also comes with trophies, obviously, and sort of gives you a little bit more incentive to play like these classic games. And the another good thing about this is even the old cheats that you would use on the Mega Drive games, they still work for this one. So if you wanted to have a better experience on certain games, and wanted to get like more lives, for example, or make certain bosses a little bit easier, you can do. So the cheats still work amazingly. So, but yeah, it's a fantastic collection, and probably one of my favourites, along with the Orange Box. So yeah. Okay, and that's it for part 2 of my PS3 collection. I hope you enjoyed it. Stay tuned for the third and final part. I've still got another 30 games to go, so yeah, stay tuned for that. And this is Skip the End signing off. Take care, everyone. Bye bye.